Hey everyone, my name's Dan Griffin, and welcome to another episode of Discovered, brought to you by Clevu. I'm here today with our good friend TJ Gamble from Jamerson. TJ goes by a lot of things. He's the e-commerce aholic. First and foremost, for me, TJ is an amazing commerce fountain of knowledge working with clients. TJ, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, I appreciate you having me.
TJ, it'd be great to jump right in. Can you share a little bit of your background and then share, what does Jamerson do and how do you help your clients be successful?
Yeah, my background, I've been around about as long as the internet's been around, definitely as long as it's been popular. And we've been helping e-commerce merchants pretty much since the beginning. First site we ever built in 1999 was e-commerce, and we've been focused on it ever since.
Talk about your background. I know you
Yeah.
shared a little bit of that, but like what makes you tick? Why are you so interested in commerce?
Well, we got into e-commerce. I got into e-commerce because it pays the bills. I'm in the middle of nowhere, strategically located in the middle of nowhere, as we like to say. Here, we were doing really crappy work for crappy clients for crappy money. Like that. That's just the bottom line. 1990s internet here in Auburn, Opelika, Alabama. There wasn't a lot to it, and so we found very quickly that e-commerce was an area where people would spend more money, but they would spend more money because we could actually measure the results of the effort. If I build you an informational site, did that help your business or did it not? I mean, there are some ways of measuring that, but it's not as direct. Whereas e-commerce, there's stats. We can look at it. It's much more mathematical as to how you grow that business. There's some art in it, but it really is a science. And I'm a technical guy. And so we could apply science and experience, and then bring that together with the art and the user experience design and really drive results for a company. And then obviously make a decent living doing that. So it's just all of those things kind of coming together, the culmination of science and design, where I find things most interesting.
I, I love learning how, especially professional services organizations, which yours is one, how you really build and typically having been on your side for a little while before I joined the software side, there's usually like one or two clients that get you over the edge. Was that the case for you? Did you find one or two merchants that you were able to work with and just measure the heck out of it and prove success?
Yeah, we were lucky enough in the early days here. There were a couple of companies that really helped us get started. They needed long-term ongoing relationships. They pretty much gave us the reins and said, do whatever you want to. And back then, things were pretty easy. And so we were really able to develop some processes through that, which have obviously had to evolve. Back then, SEO was 100% the main driver of traffic, and SEO was pretty easy. There were a lot of, we'll call them gray hat techniques you could use to kind of rank high for organic traffic to grow a business. It's obviously a different world now, but it's easier when you have that foundation to then just kind of iterate on it and figure out how to help companies grow rather than starting from scratch.
So I'm going to pivot a little bit back into you because I there aren't very many folks that are willing to get out and share opinions and educate merchants like you are and really publish it and put your words out there for everyone to consume. What started that for you? Like what made you decide to create your own social brand and really, second to that, how did you decide to kind of forego worrying about what the bigger platforms thought? Because it seems like you're really concerned about the merchant and making sure they get really good knowledge.
Well, I learned very early on, if you take care of the customers, because those platforms want those customers. And if you're doing what's right for the customers, the platforms will get over themselves a little bit. They may be mad at some of the things I say, but as long as I'm honest and fair, there's not really any complaining they can do. And so we do focus on what's best for the merchant, even if that means not working with us. We try to be very open and honest about the types of merchants that we work with, and where our process really helps them. Who can we provide the most value to? And if we can't provide value to you, then we don't feel like you should choose us. And that's the same for any e-commerce platform. If that platform's not going to be the one that's best for you in this evolution of your business, then you shouldn't choose it. And I'm not going to be the one to lie to you to tell you you should, regardless of what that platform wants me to say. Now, how we got into that is really necessity is the mother of invention. I'm strategically located in the middle of nowhere. I think we've used that one already once, but that is kind of the center of a lot of the decisions we've made over the years. We go to conferences. I started going to conferences, I guess it's probably 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now. We were really isolated here. We've been doing Magento work, which is now Adobe work, for forever. We picked it up in an early beta. We released our first project in 2008 on one of the first stable releases. We really didn't even know there was a community. We had never found that community. We had never really tapped into it. We saw all these message boards and Stack Exchange and all these things, and we're like, there has to be something out there. And so we started looking for that. We tapped into conferences, started going to a lot of these conferences, went to every single Magento thing in the United States for many, many years before the pandemic shut those down. And we had such great conversations. We found a warm and open community that would really, have open conversations. They would talk about things you would never think one of your competitors would talk about. They were giving us advice on how to grow our business, how to be better agencies. And I was like, how come we can't find this online? Like, this would be a good thing to share with everybody. And so we started live streaming and trying to create some videos, and we've evolved it from there. And I really wish we could do more. As my business grows and we have more resources, we want to double down. We really feel like this is just the beginning for us. But to have those conversations really energized us, and we needed a way to stand out. We don't have any geographic advantage whatsoever. I would say we do now because we're a fully remote team, but even that is kind of dissipated with the pandemic. Everybody's remote. Now, there's a lot of people being stupid and trying to call everybody back into the office, so that advantage may grow. But then how can we build an advantage being geographically remote and in the middle of nowhere? And so content was one of those things that just really stood out to us. We got a lot of positive response from some of those early videos, and we've just continued doing it.
It's really cool. And for those of you listening, if you want to go find TJ, you can find him by just looking for E-commerceaholic online, and we'll get a link in the bottom of the screen here to make sure that you can get there, at least understand what that's driving to, and a lot of great content across all things e-commerce. TJ, we're going to drill into something that you brought Klevu into, which is one of your success stories. And I've told you this before, and I firmly believe that the series that you're producing, called the E-commerce Makeover with Bulk Candy Store, is one of the most incredible pieces of information that a merchant should be watching to understand what is about to happen when they work through a commerce project. So one, kudos to you and your team for having the guts and finding a merchant that's willing to share this bigger story and then commit all of this time, money, and effort to pull it together, because it is by any measure an incredible amount of knowledge sharing. So I've shared that before, but it's a really cool thing. Can you share a little bit about kind of how that came to be, and then how you convinced Ken Shankman from Bulk Candy Store to participate?
Well, we're trying to figure out ways to better tell good e-commerce stories. And our videos, if you look at our videos, most of them don't get a ton of views. I feel like they're good, but they really are aimed at a small user base or a small viewer base. It's really technical e-commerce. And so we thought, how can we take this technical e-commerce and maybe make it a little more broadly appealing? So more people could watch it, maybe people who are a little more aspirational in their e-commerce journey, are really just getting started and don't have particular questions. Can we build something that's entertaining? And we went to TV for that. We looked at a lot of reality TV shows, a lot of HGTV, home design shows, The Profit on CNBC, Bar Rescue. And a lot of these focus on the drama, which we tried to avoid most of the drama, which may be a mistake when you're trying to create entertaining TV, but really focus on the business aspect of it and produce the best quality we could with the limited resources that we have. Like, I don't have a whole production team and the budget that goes along with that. So I really spent about 3 years trying to get that series done and off the ground. And it took a couple of years before I really started having the people and editor and the equipment, started collecting equipment to try to produce that. And it took about a year of savings to try to have the budget to even make an attempt at it. And so I think I drove 6,000 miles to produce that series. I literally got in the car, drove 24 hours, not straight, broke it over 2 days, to Boston, filmed 15 minutes worth of footage, got in the car and drove 24 hours home to Alabama. Several trips down to West Palm Beach, a bunch of trips to Austin, Texas to produce it. Like, it was like, let's do the best we possibly can, regardless of what it costs, as long as we don't go broke doing it. And it turned out pretty good. We made a lot of mistakes. We learned a lot of things. I think the information's great. I think we learned a lot about how we might be able to package it even better next go round. And so we are looking for another merchant. I think maybe we started releasing those in February. It's June now as of this recording. And so I think maybe I'm rested enough from it to try it again. We'll see. I don't know. There's still a little PTSD with the amount of effort we put into that one.
Well, we're always our own worst critic, right? It is for any merchant and for anyone in the agency space to understand how the e-commerce world works for a small business like Bulk Candy Store. It's an amazing story. And through all the pieces you would rather change, it's the story about moving the needle inside that business that's very powerful. And it talks about pretty much every aspect of design and software that you could have inside of a commerce ecosystem. So, again, if you're listening to this, you should definitely do yourself a favor, watch a few episodes, start from the beginning, let them play through. They're super helpful in the sense of how you organize your thoughts and you pick individual goals and then partner with your merchant to drive that success. I want to drill in a little bit, and I share that story about the e-commerce makeover because you asked us to participate in that, and we appreciate that greatly. But you started to talk about the episode in Clevu with Clevu, which is not about our product, but it's about the outcomes that Ken's team needed. And there were two aspects to that became really interesting to me. One, and this is where I'd like to start. As an agency leader, we're talking about work effort and work product, and you're always balancing that with what's the outcome for the merchant. And specifically, you designed a statement of work, I believe, around the outcomes for Ken. Talk about how product discovery flows into your team's approach to a merchant, and then we'll come back to why it's important for a merchant to understand the value.
Yeah, with Ken in particular, he had a certain set of problems, right? He's a small business, grew rapidly, and one of his biggest problems was merchandising and just making sure that people can find the products that they're looking for and that he has opportunities to merchandise alternatives. For instance, a lot of people would be looking for M&Ms, and they may be looking for a whole bag of a particular color or whatever. But he has another product that is very similar that they might not even be aware of. And it's important to be able to show that if they're looking for green M&Ms and you don't have it, but you have something that is very similar to green M&Ms, well, you want to make sure that shows up at the top. And without good tools, that becomes difficult. You start doing crazy things like stuffing keywords into descriptions and really trying to hack around the system. Whereas with Ken, small team, it needs to be automated. It needs to be really simple for his team to pick up and use. And it obviously needs to work, because if people can't find a product, they can't buy a product. And so it's core to what we do in e-commerce. And so we're going to focus mostly on conversion rates and trying to drive the most revenue we can from the traffic you're already getting. We're not going to go out and find new traffic for you. We're not going to, we'll do some on-page SEO, but we're not going to go link build. We're not going to do your paid traffic acquisition. So our entire focus is around squeezing as much revenue as possible out of the traffic that you're getting so that you then have more of a margin to then go get more paid traffic acquisition and you could pay more for them. And so we focus on things like conversion rates, lifetime value, those types of things. And product discovery is actually key to all of that. That is the engine that powers your e-commerce site. And most people don't think about that. They think I'm going to go pick an e-commerce platform and then I'm done. That's it. And I think that's what's interesting about the series is that we showed there were 10 different systems at play to actually pull together the e-commerce experience that was ideal for Ken and Bulk Candy Store. And so you pick an e-commerce platform, and that's really just the glue. That's your cataloging, that's your your checkout, hopefully, and all of the payments and things that go with that. But we had to have something to do shipping calculations. We had to have something to do the loyalty. And then we need to hang all of those on that backbone, which is Clevu and product discovery.
And thank you for bringing this back out to the ecosystem that surrounds the core. Having been in the service industry, the professional services side, like Jamerson and what you do, TJ, the hardest part is what do I do next? Advising a merchant in this case on what do they do next. Can you share a little bit about what that process is like? How do I stack rank what my problems are? How do I then make my decision off of just enough information to take that calculated or not so calculated risk?
Everything's relative. And so what you want to do is you want to look at your primary competitors. That's typically how we like to start. Let's look at your primary competitors. How good are they? And so realistically, you only need to be better than they are. And so if you're better than they are, you should theoretically get the sale as long as, the traffic is coming to you. And so now, ideally, you want to be a lot better than they are, but you need to look at areas that maybe they're having success. What functionality do they have? How well does their site seemingly perform? And then you need to start looking at your own deficiencies. Look at your conversion rate, look at your lifetime value, and start analyzing your customers and how they actually interact with your business. Are they buying once? Are they buying 3 or 4 times? Can we figure out how to get them to buy 6 or 7 times? Can we figure out how to get them to order one more thing on each order? Are you losing traffic or losing sales on your shipping calculation or your checkout? And so you look at your competitors, you look at your business, and then you try to pick whatever you think is going to provide you the biggest return for the lowest lift. And so if you're having really bad shipping calculations, well, then let's solve that, because that usually doesn't take a ton of effort and that could have a profound return on your business. If people can't find the product, well, that takes a little more effort because we're going to have to install something like Clevu, or we're going to have to go through, if you already have it, and make sure it's set up right and all your merchandising is going on. So that's a little lower lift. But you start prioritizing based on level of effort and potential return from fixing that problem.
My last question for you, this is mostly geared at the merchant side. When you have those conversations with the merchant, how often are what you would recommend, the steps you would recommend, different from what they believe their pains are?
It happens a lot, especially if we start going through and really looking at their business from an outside perspective and really contrasting it with what others are doing in the market. Oftentimes, merchants, their problems are oftentimes going to be back office problems. How do I manage this? How do I do this? What systems am I interacting with? So if you're managing support, you may be in a help desk, you may be pulling up a phone and getting on Facebook and all of these different things. So oftentimes it's technical logistical problems, or my site's not working, or it's slow, or something like that. Whereas oftentimes the things that can provide the most value may be a new piece of functionality or how your customers are actually interacting with your site. That's usually the disconnect. They see that technical problem, because that's causing them pain every day, but they don't necessarily see the problems that their customers are experiencing.
Well, I think Ken is a perfect example of that, particular to the Klevu product, because Bulk Candy Store had Klevu deployed, and they had a very kind of small, shallow portion of our functionality, and that was before you were there.
Yeah.
And shame on us almost for not being there to educate them, but that was some time ago. And Ken had been able to unlock some things just by your guidance and your team's guidance, pushing them to a couple different other small incremental changes that then surface some things you can actually see it in the episode where Ken found a product that he didn't realize was so important to growing some revenue. It was all based on searches that people were executing on their site. And I'll let the folks go watch the episode to find out kind of how that played out, because Ken will tell you it was pretty significant. But that doesn't happen without, where are my pains, incremental change, and then measuring those incremental change pieces. So, super important example there is it's not just software. You have to understand where you're trying to go. And I think, you guys do such a great job of that across the entire stack. Before we pull this out, TJ, is there any bit of advice you'd like to share with merchants, around approaching commerce and organizing their thoughts? I know that's a really large question.
That is a big question. I want to kind of add a point to what you just said there. And I think continuing education is important for most merchants. And one of the things that's really lacking, you get bogged down in your business, you're focused on your problems. And then the next thing you know, you're like Ken, you have this great tool, but you're on the smallest plan and you have no idea what it can actually do. Like, that was probably all it would do when he signed up for it. And then you've added all these new pieces of functionality, and I'm sure you've emailed them. I don't check my email. I think I've got like 3,000 unopened messages right now. And so you have to continuously stop and reevaluate where you're at and what you're doing. I would suggest at least once a year, if you hit a down season, right before you get to that downtime, stop and evaluate everything and try to figure out where you're at. And hopefully you can solve that with the tools you've already got, but you should continuously be looking at it with a fresh perspective and trying to continuously improve your business. Because if you're not, customer expectations are increasing. And so you're going to go from being in a good spot to being in a bad spot. And if you become in a bad spot and one of your competitors is outpacing you, then that becomes a problem very quickly.
Well, I appreciate that piece of advice. I think it really matters. And if you ever have any questions, I'm sure TJ's happy to answer them. TJ, I mean, we really do appreciate you on behalf of Klevu for joining us for Discovered today. Great to hear the Jamerson story. Happy to have been included in Bulk Candy Store. And we look forward to seeing more e-commerceaholic content on YouTube.
All right. I appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Have a great one.
You too.